Hey, friends, back again. Thinking about kids and AI. I know I brought the topic up a couple days ago, and it just keeps coming back around. And I don't know that I was intending for that to be the case, but today I had a situation where I go to a meeting in town called the Futurists, and we sit kind of discuss various technologies and this, that, and the other, and the AI learning, teaching, all that came up today, and I really got it was interesting because what was brought up was this study that showed that essentially if they took a bunch of people and had them write a quick research paper, just some kind of basic research, and part of the group was allowed to use chat gpt, part of the group had to do it on their own, and then essentially they were quizzed on their information that they put in this paper. It was shown pretty consistently that the people that uh it was shown pretty consistently that the people that use ChatGPT to do their research to put things together um did not in fact know the information later, like their ability to recall, retain, comprehend the stuff that they'd already written, like bring it back around, just wasn't there. And there's a bunch of data about this and lots of studies out there around this whole thing. But the general gist of it is if you've taken the time to go work through a problem, to document an answer, like just by the necessity of the amount of time you spend on it, you're going to have more exposure to the content and the topic than if you ask the computer, "Hey, give me an answer," and you get the answer. I mean, that to me makes total sense, right? Like I mean, it's no different than when I was like, I'll give you my favorite example is the Pinewood Derby, right? So when I kids were making the Pinewood Derby and Scouts, you could tell the kids that made the Pinewood Derby themselves, like made the little car themselves, versus the ones where their dad did all the work. Like it was very obvious, it was very clear. The ones that did the work themselves actually knew how the car got put together, could tell you something about it, that kind of thing. But the ones where their dad did all the work, they had no idea. And it was just because of the amount of time they actually spent immersed in the topic, connected to the topic, doing the thing. You're just going to know more, right, about it. Like you're going to hold more in your brain about something that you did the time to dig through and figure out and all that than you would otherwise. But the question isn't, I don't know that that's the right question to ask, because it's not like we haven't automated knowledge before. And I think I might have mentioned this in a previous show, the thing about the slide rule. There was a time when, and while I haven't verified this, I'm sure I can look it up and find it somewhere. There's probably a time where the introduction to the slide rule in school was controversial, because how are they going to really know their math if they don't do it by hand on a piece of paper? Surely they shouldn't be using a slide rule. That's too cheap of a, a simple thing to use. And controversy about calculators and so on and so forth. And so I think that the gist of the my discussion right now is like, so what? Okay. And when I say, well, kids just don't know things the way they knew them, I think there's a level of so what? Because the issue is this: not everything known about the universe is written down in a database somewhere for ChatGPT to get trained on. Like ChatGPT, the AI out there is trained on the corpus of human knowledge available on the general internet plus some places, and that's what it's trained on. That's what it knows. But it doesn't know what we haven't invented yet. It doesn't know what we haven't written down yet. Now, it's true that AI can, through this concept called emergent behavior, suddenly discover stuff that, human researchers doing the work haven't discovered yet either. AlphaFold's a good example of that. This protein folding thing was a mystery, a mathematical, scientific mystery, chemistry thing, biochemistry thing that was really complex, hard to track down for forever. It's a long standing problem that AI suddenly answered it, right? The AlphaFold created, ways to do this protein simulation and all this that wasn't done before, and AI figured that out. And so it's entirely possible that there's all kinds of new knowledge that's helpful to humans that AI will figure out on its own, so to speak, through emergent behavior, through the AI learning something through its thing. But that doesn't mean there aren't plenty of things out there about the universe, about, you know, humanity, about plants, about everything that's not known yet, right? And the example I'm going to give, it was actually in the thing I was in this morning, was that they were talking about neutrinos and doing all these experiments with neutrinos where they shoot them into the earth to be able to learn about neutrinos. Well, that research isn't done yet. It hasn't been completed, right? Like, they're working on building this thing. Um and while they're working on building this thing, um the fact of the matter is there are plenty of parts of the engineering design, configuration of everything they're trying to do that, is probably already written down somewhere, or something like it's written down somewhere, that if you ask ChatGPT, hey, help me configure, this type of waveform oscilloscope, technical engineering thing, help me configure this, and ChatGPT can give you a bunch of examples and data and information by pulling it up, right? You could do that. So the question is, if what I'm trying to do is take a bunch of applied information that humans already have, we already have it written down, it was already in a database somewhere, it's already something that the AI can pull from, doesn't that accelerate the speed at which we can go find new knowledge? That in fact, we are no longer in a state of sort of humanity where the important thing as an expert is for you to be able to, you know, consume and retain and hold on to information. That in fact, the real value is in finding new information, is actually in either creating truly unique new IP, like creating stories, things like that are unique and unwritten yet, right? Or in developing the next thing, the next cure for cancer or whatever. And I get the idea that, well, if you haven't done the work, how do you know the questions to ask, so to speak? But I have to wonder, much like the slide rule to the calculator, is there something in this for our kids where we need to really be thinking about, they have these shortcuts to gain knowledge rapidly that we could never have gotten. They aren't necessarily going to retain that knowledge the way we retain the knowledge we picked up as we went through school. But the retention isn't necessarily the important part, since it's at hand, right? Like, if I forget, if I've used, you know, ChatGPT, or if I've used any AI to go out and generate the information for me, and I'm kind of, I don't quite remember the details of that, but I can just ask again, right? Like, we have a superhuman supercomputer in our pockets, in everybody's pocket. Then isn't it more important that my children are teaching and learning how to think, how to do critical thinking, how to analyze the information they get, than actually the collection, absorption, and retention of that information? Isn't it really about learning, how to ask why an infinite amount of times to really get to the right answer, and how to really check sources for validity, and really, because the AI will give you sources, um, you know, learning those skills, holding a lot of explicit knowledge in your brain, that in fact building general skills of critical thinking, problem solving, and question asking, like how to ask really good questions, are those not the skills of the next world? Like if you look at the world for the in the next decade, isn't very little about it going to be about you personally being an expert in anything, because everybody has like superhuman capabilities to get expert information about everything that's known. And so really it's a matter of us going and getting the unknown. And how do you do that? Scientific method, critical thinking, those skills of being able to evaluate, is this new knowledge I'm trying to generate, is this new thing I'm trying to do, is it actually useful? Is it actually true? Is it actually accurate? Is it repeatable? Those kind of things. Like, to me, it feels like, actually, AI is here to stay. Like, that's just true. Like, we don't humans don't have a tendency to unlearn something we've learned in mass. And it seems like AI we've learned in mass, so it's not going anywhere. And so if it's not going anywhere, what are the actual skills, right? And so, you hear this idea of prompt engineering. I don't know that that's exactly the true statement, because I feel like as time goes on, that's going to be a constantly moving target based on what AI you're talking to. The natural language ability to ask that will get better over time, and that's probably not the key. But understanding how to develop a hypothesis, understanding how to develop tests for that hypothesis, understanding how to ask and receive answers based on that hypothesis, and do critical analysis of that, and to understand bias, right? The ability to do basic logic. I think that those things are going to be super critical to evaluating the information that comes back. I saw about a study today that showed, from a bias perspective, one of the challenges is that if you have something that is largely neutral, so you have an AI agent that's largely neutral, acting in a swirl of other AI agents, it will tend to be swayed either by the majority. That is, if there are other AI agents taking a conversation and doing something one way, they'll tend to move towards that, or to the sort of loudest, most common one, which both of those are tendencies humans have. And so I think all of that to be said, as we think about kids going into the future, and the fact that any knowledge is just generally available by a very quick prompt, and that the quality of information being given to us is increasing day by day. I mean, the phrase that this is the worst AI is going to be is just true, right? Like, every month, every day, it gets better and better and better. So if this is the worst AI is going to be, and this AI is subject to hallucinations and subject to bias, in the same way humans are. I mean, quite frankly, I think most of us have run into that person in our life, the crazy uncle, the nutty professor, the whatever. You've run into this person in your life that they're kind of prone to hallucinations. They're kind of prone to taking something and running with it, right? So if that's the case, how do we know? Like, when you first met that first nutty professor, that first person that was a little off, how did your parents teach you to deal with them and understand that AI kind of lives in that space? But at the same time, from like a knowledge worker capabilities perspective, if you can continually use this tool to shortcut and get to the right answer, and you know how to do that, then the real value of you in the process is getting to the next question, right? What is the next level of question? What is the next level of insight? What's the next level that you can take that to actually be more effective as a human, to get more value out of life, to discover undiscovered things? And I think that was probably the big thing I got out of the neutrino thing this morning is there is so much of our universe that is undiscovered. There's so much of how humans really work that's undiscovered. It's not like AI is preventing any of that from going on. I think, in fact, in a lot of ways, it potentially shortcuts and speeds it up. Now, I'm not saying AI doesn't make us, intellectually lazy. I think there is definitely a potential for general cognitive laziness that we all have to step up our game, right? There's this idea of doing hard things, and I think that's the other thing we've got to help our kids with moving forward is how to help them hold themselves to a mental cognitive bar that keeps them asking questions, that keeps them curious, that keeps them asking, well, is that really the thing, right? Is that really what is that true? Because if we do that, we're going to be arming them with, the right way to use this tool that shortcuts and makes things easier. but also making them valuable like contributors to society, right? If the if the typical person just isn't trying to be a critical thinker, is not worried about bias and that sort of stuff, and your child grows up with a healthy curiosity of, is that really true? Let's get critical on that. Let's develop hypotheses and work through that systematically. If they're building those skills, they will be inherently valuable in the marketplace, regardless of what AI is doing, because it's coming to address things that are unaddressed, right? Because at the end of the day, while, like I said, while AI currently has this concept of emergent behavior, and maybe we'll get to this AGI concept where it too may have emergent behavior and suddenly be able to discover everything. I just don't buy that at the moment because of how AI works, because it is an inference engine, because it's got context windows limitations. There are things about the actual architecture of the software that prevent it from doing things that humans can do, because our brain architecture is just different. And I'm not one of those that thinks that humans will always be like smarter than machine, or they can always do things. But I'd say for the kids growing up today, for the next decade, next um, maybe 2 or 3 decades, there's still this place of, if we arm them with core critical thinking skills, scientific method, um, and the ability to just be curious, like really encouraging curiosity and growth mindset, I think all AI does for those children is make them super powerful. It makes it so that they can suddenly go do stuff that someone of their age could have never thought of doing. Um, you know, because essentially you're taking students who potentially have just enough understanding to ask the right questions, and giving them the knowledge like at their fingertips that previously would have taken 17 years of education to get to. So anyway, that's kind of my thought. I think I'm actually a little more hopeful on how AI can be helpful for our students as they grow up, that they won't just become intellectually lazy, as long as we do the hard work of helping them to not be intellectually lazy, like to give them training in those things of critical thinking and scientific method. So anyway, hope this is helpful. I'm really curious about your thoughts on this, and would love to have more discussion on this topic, and maybe learn from you what you think about kids and AI. Talk to you later.